When The Fall Guy and Bad Boys Ride or Die came out, I feel like the reviews all kind of said the same thing about both. They were kind of average movies, but still a breath of fresh air from the mostly lackluster performance Hollywood had displayed throughout the first 5 months of 2024. They were enjoyable, comfortable, they got the job done, essentially. If you remember, I labeled The Fall Guy a perfect 5 out of 10, perhaps the most average movie ever made. And while I didn't review Bad Boys, I would have put it about a half point lower. Well, Twisters almost falls into that same category with The Fall Guy and Bad Boys, but I think it takes one step above it. I'd say it's the best decent movie of the year so far. The story begins with Kate and her group of friends in Oklahoma chasing a tornado to test out Kate's prototype science balls that she theorizes can disrupt and bring down a tornado. Well, it goes horribly wrong, and 5 years later, Kate is working as a meteorologist behind a desk in New York City when one of her old friends, Javi, tracks her down and asks her to come back to Oklahoma in the midst of a once in a generation tornado outbreak to help him with his tornado data gathering startup, hoping to help the people of Oklahoma better prepare for the frequent tornadoes they encounter. Kate reluctantly accepts, and when she comes back home, storm chasing is different. Everyone's doing it, it seems, and Kate meets Glenn Powell's Tyler Owens, aka the Tornado Wrangler, who runs a tornado chasing YouTube channel. Sure, why not? If I gave my reviews in front of an EF2 tornado, maybe I'd have 1 million subscribers like Tyler. Yeah, not worth it. As Kate and Javi compete against Tyler to get close to the best twisters, Kate struggles against the colossal failure she experienced 5 years ago and slowly succumbs to Tyler's Glenn Powellness. Honestly, this film almost feels like a Hallmark movie set in Tornado Alley. The uptight city girl returns home where she meets a handsome country boy who never left the rural landscape, and he helps her slowly rediscover why the small town life is so great. Except instead of Christmas tree farms and caroling, it's rodeos and tornado chasing. And of course, some better acting and a bigger budget. Let's start with the good. I said at the top, this is in a similar vein to The Fall Guy and Bad Boys Ride or Die, with a little something extra. Both of those movies were pretty basic, lighthearted action films with charismatic actors carrying them that had their own little filter put over them. The Fall Guy did it with a comedic stuntman gimmick. Bad Boys had its own bright colored Miami filter covering it. Twisters is much the same. It's fairly lighthearted for most of it, much more so than the 1996 film, at least. Glenn Powell is its charismatic workhorse, and it's got a Tornado Alley, Oklahoma filter put over it. The X factor that makes Twisters better is, well, the Twisters. You're not going to get my heart racing with just another fast paced action scene without some compelling world building and character development. And all three of these movies mostly lack those. But what will get my heart racing is seeing an EF5 tornado rip through an oil refinery and start hurling flaming pieces of metal at Ram trucks. Because the special effects are really good. That's what really sets it apart. The other positive thing to note is Glenn Powell is Glenn Powell. He's kind of a backup Ryan Gosling in my eyes, but since Top Gun Maverick, 3 of the 4 movies he's done have been some sort of rom-com or romantic action movies. And the other one, he was a pilot. Again. He needs to get into some more diverse movies. Get him into a strict action movie, an action comedy, a drama. If he wants to go the Ryan Gosling route, which his whole personality and even his look suggests, he needs his nice guys, his Blade Runner 2049, his Big Short. Because as evidenced here, he can certainly carry a film. And as a big country music fan, I can't end the positives section without mentioning the soundtrack. With Lainey Wilson, Luke Combs, Bailey Zimmerman, Miranda Lambert, and Thomas Rhett, the album that came out of this is the best movie playlist since the first Guardians of the Galaxy. But now for the film's shortcomings. It doesn't have the tightest plot. Like, how does Javi get his hands on new military prototype radars, especially when he's no longer in the military? I'm about 99% positive the US military does not allow that. It teases its potential to be an interesting scientific movie, but decides not to go down that path, probably in an attempt to be as palatable as possible to the widest audience. The film makes a point about potentially predatory business practices that it doesn't explore at all, just needed a bit of conflict to move Kate's character development along. Which brings me to the biggest flaw in the movie, Kate. Now, notice I say Kate and not Daisy Edgar Jones. The actress herself gave a fine performance for the character that was written. But the character that was written just wasn't fun at all, except for some scenes where Glenn Powell is bouncing off of her. That's why Glenn Powell had to carry the film. In the brief flashback sequence at the beginning of the film, Kate is portrayed as a curious mind who has a strange love and fascination for extreme weather. Because of the crippling failure she faced, her spirit was quashed. Makes perfect sense. Except by the time she really rediscovers her love for storm chasing, the movie's pretty much over. It should have been reignited in her because of the work she was doing with Javi that would help lots of people and Tyler's infectious adrenaline fueled excitement. But instead, Kate finally finds her passion again about 30 minutes too late. But those problems are the kind of writing problems you expect from a decent movie. And if you're gonna give me a decent movie, it's gotta set itself apart from the other dozen decent movies that get released that year. And Twisters does. That's why its opening beat that of Bad Boys and The Fall Guy easily. And after an opening 5 months that seemed to spell box office disaster for Hollywood in 2024, the year may still be salvageable yet.
All right, the sauce.
What?
The sauce. I don't know. You're using too much sauce. Okay? Review's over.